Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala khatim al-anbiya, ashraf al-mursaleen, wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Qala subhanahu wa ta'ala ba'da a'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. We begin by reminding ourselves of the ayah of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Allah makes ithbat, makes firm those who believe with a firm statement in the dunya, in hayatul dunya, in the worldly life and in the akhirah. This ayah, as the Mufassir Ibn Kathir, he explains, it has a beautiful glad tiding for the believer. For the zalimun, as we see in the continuation of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets them go astray. But for the believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that gives them ithbat, steadfastness. And I'm beginning with this ayah because I want to talk about something that's coming in front of us, a journey that we're heading towards, whether we realize it or don't, whether we think about it or not. It's ahead, it's coming. And sometimes when we talk about this, it overwhelms us. Because something is rough. But I want to always remember that if you are people of Iman, and if we are people of Amal salihah, yani good actions, and people who put tawakkul ala Allah, who put our faith in Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from His mercy and from His qudra, from His ability, He will give you ithbat. I don't want things to become where we become hopeless. Always put your hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Having said that, understand that the reality is that we have a very difficult task ahead of us. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he knew about things that we don't know about. Yani Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed through wahi knowledge to him. And much of that he shared with us, and we'll talk about. But he had the reality that sometimes it's very difficult for us to grasp. And that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that if you knew what I know, you would laugh very little and you would cry a lot. You look at us today, I don't mean crying like when you're crying because you're sad or something. No, crying out of the fear of Allah, crying out of the fear of the akhirah, crying for the fear of yourself and what will be your destination. Our time in that is very little. And useless talking and useless laughing and jokes and this is a lot. Why? Because we don't have that reality that we should. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had it, so he said, if you knew what I know, you would laugh little and you would cry a lot. And you wouldn't even enjoy spousal relations. And it's something that's halal, meant for enjoyment. You wouldn't, because imagine today, if somebody tells you, you know what, you got cancer and you got 3 days to live, and they're going to be really difficult 3 days, and you're going to be in pain the whole time, and you don't have money, your bank account's also empty, and by the way, there's a war coming, and Russia just launched nukes at Cleveland. I mean, seriously, right? If all those stress were together, who could sit and laugh? Like, who could waste time? Who would be playing video games? Who would be like, you know, let's go out on a date? I mean, even with your spouse, within the halal, I'm not talking about haram, right? Because you would be stressed. You got cancer and death and nukes and all this, right? But in reality, what's ahead of us is more dangerous than that. It's scarier than that, but we ignore it. And that's why we waste time. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you knew what I know, you would run in the streets looking for the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, like when you become desperate, you just run around, whatever you can do. But for us, we forget that. So as a reminder, I wanted to share a few things with you. And these are things that I didn't write or come up with to give a talk. These are things that I was listening to some talks of my own Shaykh and I wrote down for my own benefit. I always keep a book and pens with me, so if I'm traveling and I'm listening to a Shaykh or a scholar, I write things down for my own benefit. But today, since the brothers have asked me, even though I'm not deserving to speak to you, when there are people more qualified than me here, but I thought I would share some of these things with you. In the Musannaf ibn Abi Shayba, it's hadith number 27,017. It's also in the Kitab al-Zuhud, Imam Ahmad and al-Waqi' in his Kitab al-Zuhud. And some of the ulama graded it to be Hasan, some to be Sahih, but it's authentic and a reliable narration. Jabir ibn Abdullah, he reports that in the time of Ben Israel, right? I'm going to talk about these ahadith because it's a part of that knowledge that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us about from the unseen, that if we knew, it would balance us out. Right? And it's an authentic narration. I'm not going to allow any weak narrations today. So here it says there was a group from Ben Israel, and they were going by a maqbara, a graveyard. In Ben Israel, they had many miracles, many amazing things. And that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us about them. So they made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, raise somebody from this grave who's dead to tell us about what happens after death. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is qadir, He's able. When they prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had a person raise up from the grave who was dead. And He told them, what do you want to know? Like, what are you waking me up for? Why are you calling me? And the longer narration in the Zuhud, in the Kitab al-Zuhud, it mentions that he had athar al-sujud, like he had a mark from sujud. So it's not like it was somebody who was a fasiq or a fajir or a kafir. It was somebody who used to worship Allah. And he says, it's been 100 years since I died, and I still feel that pain of death. Just now, that effect of death, the harshness of death, Sakratul Maut, they're just wearing off now, 100 years in. And He put your life in perspective. We steal, na'udhu billah, we lie, we cheat, we betray the trust, we violate so many the rules. How do we not think that I will have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How will I be in that qabr? This is a journey coming in front of you, whether you like it or not, whether you deny it. You can deny it all you want. You can close your eyes, you can say there's no death and I'm not going to die, I'm going to live forever, we don't die, we multiply. You can make up all kinds of funny statements, and you can trick yourself all you want. You know you're going to die. You've seen it. You buried people. You prayed janazah. You made ghusl for the dead. I remember growing up, burying what I would call friends at the time. They were kuffar. And I remember some that died, whether they were shot or stabbed, in my arms. Like I was there holding them. It's a crazy feeling because you see it. Like you see a moment that they're there, and then you see that pain in front of you, and then you see that moment, the ruh leaves. The body becomes like an empty case. Like it's got eyes, it's got ears, it's got a head, it's got a brain, it's got a heart, but it's gone. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, He told us about this time of death, that it has pains. And this time is the most dangerous time. Because here Shaitan, Iblis, he works on you the most. Like throughout your life, Shaitan is your enemy. Open enemy. He's always trying to misguide you. He's always trying to, in many tricks. Like he'll come to a sister and he'll tell her like, why the hijab? Why the niqab? Why the gloves? Why this? Why that? Why the abaya? Why can men have 4 wives? Why can this? Why can that? And he'll bring these waswas. But Shaitan will never want good for you. Shaitan, Iblis, never wants good for you. What will he do? He will want to take you from an honored life, from a life of being covered or being protected, a life where when somebody sees you, even if they're racist, even whatever, they still have to respect you. Right? And he wants to take you to a life where you become like an object of men's desires, an object that's used and thrown, an object that's passed around, an object that's disgraced, an object that ends up being passed and passed and passed until a time where you're worried about how will you live your life, because those looks that were the only thing Shaitan wanted to make you valuable for are fading. And such a horrible thing, but he beautifies it for you. He'll come to a brother and he'll be like, what's all this beards and praying, and why can't I use riba, and why can't I make money, and he'll make the world flashy for you. And he'll take you away from a beautiful life, a life of barakah, a life of blessings, where you're content and you're happy, and he'll have you chase your desires until you're broke, until you're dead inside, until nothing is tasteful to you, nothing is pleasurable for you, nothing feels good, where you have money and everything but you're depressed. So you gotta keep that in mind. And at that time of death, it becomes the harshest. That fitna becomes the hardest. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, as his son Abdullah reports, he said, my father was at the deathbed, and we were with him, and he would say, La ba'du, la ba'du. Like, no afterward, no after it. And we're like, my father, what are you saying? Like, this is the time you should be saying the shahada, you should be, what are you saying? Imam Ahmad, he would come in and out of consciousness at this time of death. He said, you know, Shaitan is coming to me, and he's telling me, oh Ahmad, you have escaped from me. You've made it. You've made it. You've escaped my grasp. And I'm telling him, no, not yet. Not yet. This is the time of death, and Shaitan is taking this harsh test in a trick. He's telling him, but look at us today. How many of us worry about going to Jahannam? How many of us worry about the qabr? How many of us? In Arabic, we have 2 types of tongues, lisan. Lisan maqal or lisan al-hal. There is the tongue of what is said, and then there is the tongue of what is done. All of us will be like, yes, may Allah protect us from Jahannam, may Allah protect us. But then our actions don't say that. Our actions say, I'm guaranteed Jannah, I'm not worried about anything, Jannat al-Firdaus is for me, Jahannam is for kuffar, I'm good. You tell a brother, ittaqullah, he gets upset. What? Are you telling me to ittaqullah? You think I don't have taqwa? He's a brother, we used to tell him, hadikumullah, may Allah guide you. He used to get upset. Why are you telling me Allah guide me? I'm guided already. Allah protect us. You have to be careful. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, there's just points of benefit. He said the time of death is very difficult except for 2 types of people. He says there's two qualities that make the type of time of death easy for the person. One, a person of taqwa, a person who has that awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has protected himself from sins. Even then, it will be difficult. Death is not easy for anybody. And there is different levels. Aisha radiallahu anha said that I used to think that good people would have a very easy death and bad people were the only ones who had a hardship of death, until I saw that even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, death was difficult for him. And death is not easy. But what makes it easier? One, people who really have that close relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People who contemplate before anything, is Allah going to be pleased with this? Is this a sin? Is this good? Is this statement of mine going to please Allah? Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah is an amazing scholar. There's a book called Dawa Dawa. It's also called Jawab al-Kafi. Everybody has it, mashallah. But read it and read it again. He has a statement in there that shocked me. Right? I was reading and he said, I'm going to translate this easy. Yeah? He said, if you're going to say something, evaluate before saying it. Is it something beneficial? Is it something that helps me in the akhirah? Is it something pleasing to Allah? Is there benefit in it? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, that there is no benefit in it, don't talk. Better you stay quiet, don't say it. And if the answer is yes, it is beneficial, what should you do? Huh? Say it. That's what I thought. Keep silent? No. Ibn al-Qayyim says that if it's beneficial, ask yourself again, is there something more beneficial? Because life is very short and you have to do that which is most beneficial. I was shocked because as I was reading it, I'm thinking ahead and I said, if there is benefit, I thought the same thing. Then you should say it. No, that is why Ibn al-Qayyim is Ibn al-Qayyim. He says, no, even if it's beneficial, think again, is there something more beneficial that you should be saying? Because this life is short. Here, a person of taqwa, and the second thing Ibn al-Qayyim says, is a person of good akhlaq. Somebody who takes care of the guests, somebody who deals well with people, somebody who is kind with people, somebody who's soft with people, somebody who has the best mannerisms. And he mentions many adillah. I'm just summarizing the points of benefit. And he said it's very difficult on people that are harsh. People that are harsh with people, people who do oppression, dhulm. Yeah, that's why you should be very... Abu Darda has a narration that he mentions that the iman is taken away from people, and one of the sifat he gives are those that eat the wealth of the orphan, because this is oppression, the orphan. And today in our land we send money for orphans and people take that money and they use it and they steal it, and they have charities. They're out there talking about we're raising money for orphans, but then they take that and they put it in their pocket. That's why expenses. Ittaqillah. What will happen at the time of that death for you? In the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari, he has a hadith. It's a very beneficial hadith. It's in the Sahih Imam Muslim as well. متفق عليه. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم من أحب لقاء الله, whoever loves to see Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أحب الله لقاءه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to see them. Whoever loves to meet Allah, Allah loves to meet them. ومن كره, and whoever doesn't like liqa Allah, to see Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like to see them. Allah doesn't like to meet them. This hadith is beautiful, right? You know, whoever loves to meet Allah, whoever loves that they die and they go back to their Rabb, then Allah loves to meet them. And whoever hates that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want to meet them. Right? Now we take this hadith and that's it. But the Sahaba were not like this. The Sahaba wanted to implement every hadith. They wanted to grasp it. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she says, Ya Rasulullah, كلنا يكره الموت. يعني all of us hate death. يعني it's not just that, okay, you have lip service. You're like, yeah, I love death. I'm ready for death. But you're not. Aisha radiyallahu anha, she says that Ya Rasulullah, كلنا نكره الموت. And we all hate death. فقال صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس كذلك. It's not like that. ولكن المؤمن, the mu'min, إذا بشر, when he is given the glad tidings, بالرحمة ورضوان Allah, the mercy and the pleasure of Allah, and al-jannatihi, and the Jannah that is there for him, أحبه, يعني he loves لقاء Allah. فأحب الله لقاءه, then Allah loves to meet him. وإن الكافر, and verily the kafir, إذا بشر, when he is given the news or the tidings of عذاب الله, بعذاب الله, about the punishment of Allah and the sakht of Allah, the dislike, the displeasure of Allah, فكره, then he hates لقاء الله, وكره الله لقاءه. Here there is a hadith reported by Imam Ahmad and Abu Dawud and others from Al-Barra ibn Azib. It's a beautiful hadith, and it is a long hadith, but I will summarize from it. They said, we went to a graveyard for one of the Ansar. One of the Ansar had passed away, and we were burying him. And here, when you listen to this hadith, know that this is going to come on you. This situation is going to come. This is not a fairy tale. It's a Sahih hadith. He said, here, when we buried him, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sat down on a small wall, like not like a high one you can sit on. It's not from the sunnah that when you bury somebody in the janazah, that afterwards you're like, everybody get together, let's make a dua, and then we give speeches on speeches. MashaAllah, like nowadays, funerals have become like auditions. Every shaykh has to go and flex. We go to some funeral, subhanAllah, the janazah, there's like lines, like one guy's gonna give a talk, then the other, and they got speaker systems, and it's become a show, right? Like Shaykh got talent or something, right? This is not the sunnah. You're making dua, the janazah is the dua. You have to follow the sunnah. But tadabbur, to contemplate on death at the graveyard, this is sunnah. So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't get up and give a khutbah, but he just sat down and he looked up and he looked down and he looked up again and he looked down, and the third time he looked up and looked down. And the Sahaba, like I said, like for us, we're on like a survival mode. We just kind of go through life. The Sahaba, no, they wanted to know. So they told the Prophet ﷺ, what are you doing? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, seek refuge with Allah from adhab al-qabr. Seek refuge with Allah from the punishment of the grave. Some people today, their aqidah gets corrupted, they start denying adhab al-qabr. Look at these ahadith, look at the ayat about Al Fir'aun and their punishment before their hashr. Ajib. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make dua himself in salah to seek protection from the adhab al-qabr, and he taught us from this. So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them, seek protection from Allah, استعيذوا بالله من عذاب القبر. Then he told them that when a mu'min, when a believing slave, he passes away, he leaves this dunya, the malaika of rahmah, they come. This hadith I'm playing an explanation of the earlier hadith about who loves to meet Allah. He says the malaika, the angels of mercy, they come, and Malak al-Maut comes to him, and I'm bringing together the different mutun of the same riwayat. He says, comes to him in a beautiful form, a pleasing form. Imagine me and you. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're a brother or sister. I don't care if you're white or black. I don't care if you're Arab or Ajam. I don't care if you're rich or poor. Everybody's going to go through this. Malik al-Maut comes. Nobody's gonna have a chance. Y'all better stay awake, man. If I see brothers dozing, I'm gonna be calling on you. This ain't a subject to sleep on, right? Malak al-Maut, the angel of death, comes. And he comes in a pleasing form. And they tell this person, "O slave of Allah, glad tidings to you. The mercy of Allah, the pleasure of Allah, you are heading to Jannah." Imagine that moment. How happy would you be? All your hardships, everybody, sisters that wore the niqab and people called you ninjas, and brothers that had, they were making wudu and people mocked you and people called you a terrorist and people called you whatever, Arab, whatever you went through, you were hit, beaten, imprisoned, whatever you went through, all of that, you forget about all that. All that matters now, you made it. You made it. And you'll be like, "Yeah, Allah sends mercy on me. Allah's pleasure. I want to meet Allah." This is that moment you love to meet Allah, and Allah loves to meet you. Imagine how valuable that is. Here, those malaika, that come, the malaika of mercy, they will call you by the best name. Imagine today, somebody calls you a name you don't like, right? Maybe there's a racial slur. Maybe there's a nickname people put on you that you don't like. People call you that, you get upset. What? What'd you call me? Right? That day, when they call you by the best names, like today, you might like something. Maybe you like to be called Abu something. Like you like to be called some name that pleases you. Maybe your wife has a name for you, or your husband for the wife has a name that you with love, they call you, right? That day, those malaika will call you by the best names. They will raise you to the sama, to the first sky. And the angels, that are the gatekeepers of that sky, they will open the doors and they'll know you. Can you imagine? Angels know you. We don't see this. This is the test. This is the ghaib. But there are malaika that know me and you. And when you and me do good, those malaika make dua for us. We don't have time to get into all those ahadith. Jazakallah khair. But those malaika, they know you, they greet you, they open the sama. They say, "Who is this person? What a beautiful smell." Like, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he liked to smell good. Most brothers and sisters, they like to smell good. You go, they tell you, "What a beautiful smell." They call you by the best names. Marhaban, welcome. You go to the first sama. You go to the next. Imagine, this is past NASA. You know this, right? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? زَيْنُ السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا بِمَصَابِيحِ. We purified the sama ad-dunya, Surah Mulk, right? The first sky with lamps. That means all that NASA has been even able to contemplate. Forget about God, forget about Musk, forget about all that, right? All these solar systems and galaxies and universes and multiverses or whatever else that has planets and stars, this is all just the first sky. You go past that, second sama, third, fourth, angels greeting you. I'm summarizing for time. They're greeting you all this way. Every sky you go to, they marhaban, marhaban, they invite you. Until you get past the seventh. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives you glad tidings. Imagine. And Allah's qadir. Everybody dies everywhere in the world at all times. Allah's qadir on it. Then He says, "No, but I promised that I will raise you," so put them back in the grave. And the hadith that Ibn Majah and others have mentioned, that Abu Dawud, when you're back in the grave and all the people leave, the last footsteps go, there are two angels that will come to you. And these angels will look different to different people. And they'll ask you, "Man Rabbuk?" Who's your Rabb? Here the ayah we mentioned, يُثَبِّتُ اللَّهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives you ithbat in the qawl al-thabit. If it wasn't for the will of Allah and the mercy of Allah, we wouldn't be able to answer. But because you lived your life by the Sharia here in the qabr, you will be able to answer. Rabbi Allah. My Rabb is Allah. But think about it. What if you feared someone more than Allah? What if you sold your religion for money? What if you knew the ahadith and ayat but you wanted to get accepted into Yale or Harvard or whatever, and you decided that that was more important than to sticking to the kitab or sunnah? What if you knew something was shirk but for popularity you sold out on that? What if you knew that Allah has given a hukm in the sharia, hudud, but you're like, no, that's barbaric. Who could implement that? Who could implement that in our time? How could? Norway, look at Norway. How beautiful Norway is. Sahaba would have loved it. Who's your Rabb? Money? Now you can say Allah. Where's lisan al-hal? If Allah is your Rabb, فَقُلْ بِمَا قَالَ اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. If Allah is your Rabb, say, Allah said this in the Quran, wallahi we believe in it, no matter what you say. Say what you want about me. What? You want to call me a name? Go for it. What are you going to do? You're going to put me in jail? Go for it. You're going to kill me? Go for it. So what? Allah is my Rabb. If Allah hasn't written it for me, you can't do it. And if Allah has written for me, khalas, alhamdulillah, I thank Allah. That is when Allah is your Rabb. Not when you sell out your religion, not when you worry about money or people's statements more than what Allah has said, not when you know the truth and you hide it and you're ashamed of it and you cower. Then you can say whatever you want. But your Rabb is apparent. You're asked, Ma dinuk, what's your religion? Easy right now, Islam. Even a munafiq, a full munafiq, somebody who's totally kafir in his heart, somebody who's a spy or whatever, even right now he could be like, Islam, I'm Muslim, it's not my religion. Yeah. But when it comes to following the Sharia or following secular laws, when it comes to establishing the laws of Allah on the planet, on the earth, and you're right now, some of you are shaking that I just said that. Right now, some of you are worried. What are you worried? If our deen is Islam, then this is our deen. قال Allah wa qala Rasul alayhi salam. That's our deen. We believe in it. It's the best way. Not communism, not secularism, not Darwinism, not democracy. Not democracy and not democracy. I said it, so do something. Not republics, not kingdoms, not serfdoms, not socialism, not thisism, not that-ism. Sharia. The laws of Allah, divine. Then your deen is Islam. You're shown a image or a figure or two, representation of the Prophet ﷺ. Say, what do you say about this man? Easy right now. If somebody asks you, who's your Prophet? Everybody, Muhammad ﷺ. Easy, right? Easy answer. But when somebody tells you this is the Sunnah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he raised his hands like this in Salah, but you say, no, not in my madhab. When somebody tells you that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Sahih Hadith, he said this, no, I can't live with that. Now my friends will be like, what? Not in my culture, not in my Islam. We need an American Islam. We need a Chinese Islam. How many Islams do we need? We only need one Islam. When we know something is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, then we don't talk about madahib, then we don't talk about ai''imma, we don't talk about cultures, we don't talk about traditions, we don't talk about I'm black, I'm white, I'm Chinese, I'm Afghan, I'm Arab, I'm this, I'm that. Nobody cares. I'm Muslim, that's my identity. I am a follower of the Prophet ﷺ, that's my way. That's the Sunnah. That is when you will be able to say that this is my Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. The one who fails in that qabr, Allah, this is the first step. You failed. Hammer that hits you, that will destroy, all these ahadith. But Uthman radiallahu anhu, when he would go, and you know this, I know it's a reminder, you guys are knowledgeable, but think about it. When he would see the qabr, he would cry so much that even though he would cry when he would hear about Jannah and Jahannam, but when he saw the qabr, when he heard about the qabr, he would cry more. He said, why? He said, this is the first step. You fail here, you know the rest is a failure. That moment, I'm going to go back to the hadith of al-Barra. When the kafir dies. Right? We talked about the mu'min when he dies, the malaika. When the kafir dies, the malaika, the angels of adab, the angels of punishment, they come. Malik al-Maut comes in a different form. He looks scary. And at that time, when that ruh is taken, gharqa, and it's harsh, it's painful. Death is difficult for everybody, but it's not the same. That death, you won't be able to see it because this is ghaib now. But that is such a painful moment that all your luxuries in life, the woman that said, you know what, I'm not about all this hijab stuff, I'm throwing it off, I'm gonna go makeup up and I'm gonna go party and I'm gonna live it up and all that stuff. And a brother who was like, I can't be doing this, I gotta go get my drink on, I gotta go do this, I gotta make money, halal, haram, whatever, I gotta do this. The one who lives up their desires, that moment, you will forget about all of those pleasures. It's gonna mean nothing to you. That moment, you'll realize you failed. May Allah protect us. May Allah protect us. May Allah protect us. That moment, you're not gonna wanna see Allah anymore. And Allah doesn't wanna see you then. That moment of death, when the malaika rip your soul out, there's no pain in the world that compares to it. That's why the Sahaba, they were going through pain. They were cut up in battles. They were tortured. And they would be thanking Allah. How? Because they realized this. So when that ruh is taken out, it's given the tidings of the punishment of Allah, of the adhab of Allah. That person had a chance. Me and you have that chance now to fix it. But then when they're ripped up and they go towards the samawat are closed. The angels say, you smell horrible. It's disgusting. They call them by the worst name. Imagine a name that you don't want to be called by. Right? Somebody calls you, you're ready to fight. You're ready to get mad. You're ready to get angry. Right? But that day, you're going to fight the malaika? Huh? You're going to try to overpower them? Go for it. Try it. You think you got something on Malik al-Maut? That day when they call you those names, the samawat are closed for you. Why? Because you were a person of dunya. You loved the dunya. The malaika are like, you're not welcome. You're not welcome here. You stink. And Allah will tell you that day, the punishment is yours. Put them back. Because Allah has promised that He will raise us all, good and bad. And Allah keeps His promises, but you're told that day, that's it. That day, you failed. Those malaika, they come to you. They ask you those questions. What? In dunya, even a kafir could give the answer. But that day, that connection between your brain and your tongue is cut. It's what's in the heart that comes out. You didn't live by the laws of Allah. You didn't stand for the laws of Allah. You were like, nah, I don't know about this barbaric stuff. I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm this, I'm that, I'm progressive. What are you progressing towards? I'm a liberal. I'm not like you guys. Alright. Find out that day. You're thrown back in the qabr. There are so many ahadith, the qabr, how it closes in on you. How you are told, this is your place in Jahannam and you can smell it. I mean, just imagine the time. If I lock you in a closet right now, just you, in a tight closet, like a box, dark, huh? Forget about everything else. I just lock you in a closet. And a day goes by, a day and night, and you're sitting in a closet, claustrophobic box, dark, no light, no food, no drink, nobody to talk to, nobody to hear you scream. That's it. If I just did that, you're gonna go crazy. A week, a month, a year, you die from it. Imagine that qabr. Next time you want to sin, next time you get tempted by the dunya, next time you want to sell out your religion, just think about this. You're in that qabr, tight. And people that died 100 years ago, where are they? In that qabr. People that died 1,000 years ago. People that died in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. People that died in the time of Isa ibn Maryam 2,000 plus years ago. People that died in the time of Dawood alayhi salam. People that died in the time of Musa alayhi salam. People that died in the time of Yusuf alayhi salam. People that died in the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. People that died in the time of Nuh alayhi salam. People that died in the time of Adam alayhi salam. Who knows how many thousands or hundreds of thousands or years have passed? Allah knows best. They're in that grave. Just that enough should be enough to keep you on the straight path. But for the mu'min, for the believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes. Abu Sayyid al-Khudri, in this hadith, he asked Rasulullah, who can handle this? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him that Allah makes that time for the believer so easy. It's like the time between two salawat. Imagine how valuable is that you die. It's like you're waiting for, and the qabr is made like a garden. Wow, like huge, vast. You're shown this could have been your place in Jahannam, but Allah protected you by you following what's right. Here's your place in Jannah, you're smelling Jannah, you're enjoying this just between two salawat, like that time, and then Day of Judgment. 10,000, 20,000 years, like that. That is why we have to stay firm on our religion. But brothers and sisters, that's not the end. Then what happens? You're called to be raised. The Day of Judgment. A day, imagine, like think through this. Don't just listen to it like everybody else and just go, think about it. If you were naked right now, if one of you walked into this masjid butt naked, birthday suit, nothing on. Sisters, if you walked into this men's side fully naked, imagine the shock everybody would be in. But imagine a stress that a woman is butt naked, a man is fully naked, and nobody notices. What stress is that? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you'll be raised on the Day of Judgment naked, uncircumcised. Your body will be recreated by Allah. You come, Aisha radiyallahu anha, she has haya. She says, Ya Rasulullah, wouldn't people see each other? He says, on that day, nobody will notice. A day that if death wasn't dead, you would die from it. 50,000 years is just one second. You want to sell out that religion for what, a 70-year life, or a 10-year life, or a few minutes of pleasure, or a moment, or a month? 50,000 years Allah will not speak to the creation. You're just standing, you're waiting. Sun is on your head. Imagine a hot day and you got no shade, no AC. You're like in the desert. You're like this. You can't take it. Imagine if that sun is on your head. you would have died. No, I mean, don't think it's like, you just die. But Allah kills death that day. There is no more death. If there was death, that would be good. It would be easy. You'd get out of it. In dunya, every hardship, at least you have death. But that day, you don't have death. The sun's on your head, people are drowning. Imagine you sweat so much, there are people with sweat to their ankles, to their knees, to their shoulders. People are drowning in their own sweat. Physically, it's impossible for this body. That's why Allah gives you a new body. That Allah gives you a time, a place that there is no death. Allah is angry that day. And why shouldn't Allah be angry that day? That is, look, we were given a purpose to worship Allah. Somebody's like, I'm going to go worship an idol. I'm going to worship my desires. I'm going to worship money. You don't have to say that, but you do it. I'm going to worship a grave. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ what? إِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينَ. No, I'm going to say, Ya Ali, Ya Abdul Qadir, Ya Fulan, Ya Fulan. How dare we? I'm going to worship Jesus, alayhi salatu wasalam. I'm going to worship Ali, radiallahu anhu. No, those are ibad of Allah. Those are slaves of Allah. You were given one job. Worship none but Allah. You failed at that. Allah is angry that day. Imagine your children, your parents are angry, like really angry at the stress you feel. Imagine a cop pulls you over and you just tell he's pissed off. You go to a judge and he's angry. Imagine Allah is angry. 50,000 years, you're just done. What's ahead of that is worse. For the fasiq, for the fajr, for the kafir. A Jahannam you can't imagine. A Jahannam I don't want to talk about. But for the believer, for the mu'min, that day of judgment is made fast. You're sitting on members. You're sitting on pulpits. You're sitting on thrones. Under the shade. The 7 types of people. You know the hadith. Under the shade. May Allah give it to us. May Allah make us from them. May Allah make us from them. To be under the shade of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the hardships you went through in dunya is nothing now. You're seeing malaika. You're given your book in your right hand. You go to that Jannah and you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see your Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala. And your Rabb tells you, I am pleased with you and I will never be displeased with you. Allah is nothing better than that. There's nothing worth working harder for than that. So my respected brothers and sisters in Islam, this is one of those things where you can ignore it, it still come. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Qais, the intelligent person, is the one who prepares for what's after death. And the foolish person, ajiz, is the one who continues to sin upon sin and thinks that Allah is going to forgive him. He has some kind of guarantee. So you could be intelligent, you could take today's lesson, this time that you've spent with me, and you could say, from this day, from this speech, from this sitting, I'm going to change. Even if you're doing good, you can do better. If you're doing bad, you can get away from it, obviously. I'm going to change the purpose of my life. I'm going to make this religion the main purpose. Yes, I'll work. Yes, I'll have families. I'll take care of my family. I'll do all of that. But the main priority is, how am I going to get past this journey that's ahead of me? Or you could ignore it. You could find faults. You could be like, this guy's, okay, whatever fault you want to find in me, khalas, I'll give it to you. It's in me. Whatever you want to say about me, I'll give it to you. So what? What's that going to help you? You could ignore it. You could get up and say that was a great talk or a horrible talk, and you can just go back to your rest of your life, whatever you were doing before you came here today. But know that the hujjah is upon us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote for you to be here. He wrote for me to be here. He wrote for us to listen. You know more than me. Okay, it's okay. You know more than me. No problem. It's a reminder Either you take the reminder and you get to the life of success, or you ignore the reminder and you have no excuse in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those that implement what we hear, that hear something and take it to the heart. May Allah protect us from ilm ala lisan. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm saying this for myself. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, al-ilm ilman. Knowledge is of two types. Al-ilm ala lisan, the knowledge that is on the tongue, and that is the hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon Ibn Adam. And then there is a ilm, that's in the heart, qalb, and that is ilm al-nafi'. May Allah make this to be ilm al-nafi' for us. Wa jazakum Allahu khair.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. If there's any question and answers pertaining to the topic for Shaykh Uthman, we can go ahead with any questions.
تفضلوا. Go ahead. عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.